Hi everyone, I'm Donna Stellhorn, your practical astrologer, here to talk to you today about the solar eclipse on December 14th, and this solar eclipse is on the galactic center. So if we look at the whole galaxy, the galactic center is around 26 degrees of Sagittarius, and this eclipse is at 23, so we're only 3 degrees off. And what the galactic center represents is kind of the repository of all knowledge. It's a spiritual point where we're all heading, kind of the source of all things. Now, with that said, of course, an eclipse means that the moon, which is our emotions and how we feel about things, is sitting between the sun, which represents identity, and the earth, which is where we live. And so our emotions are getting in the way. We feel blocked and we need to try to move forward. And what we're moving forward on is our belief systems, our rules. And so this eclipse is very much about asking yourself if you're following your rules, if you are overburdened by your rules, if you are in line with your belief system, are you compromising your beliefs? Do you know what you believe at all? And are you willing to talk about or share your belief system, not so much to change others, but to help you grow? So one of the most important things is to remember that while we're all heading the same direction towards spiritual growth, we're not all on the same point in the path. There are going to be people who are not as far along as you are on the spiritual path. There's going to be people who are farther along than you are. And so remembering that and having some patience with people who maybe are struggling, and then having patience with yourself for where you struggle. All of that's very important now. Community is also extremely important, and part of the reason that we are in this global pandemic is a reminder of the effects of community. The fact that we have now been isolated from each other to remind us how important it is to connect with one another. And so now we're finding other means of connecting, like through videos. But at the same time, the Sagittarius energy says that we are looking to figure out how we're different than others, how to differentiate ourselves through our beliefs or through our knowledge. And so once we say, okay, I believe this and you believe something else, then we can look at the other person and say, okay, that's very interesting that they believe something else. Or we can develop prejudices, which we don't want to do. Or we don't want to go out of our way to say, well, that person must be wrong, and therefore I need to spend the rest of my life trying to change how they believe. Instead, we want to say, I believe what I believe, and it's okay if the other person believes something else. We can still coexist. So this particular solar eclipse at 23 Sag is about what you believe, how you're practicing your beliefs, how you're growing spiritually, and how you are taking responsibility to do the things that your beliefs say that you should. Now, this solar eclipse is making a semi-sextile to Pluto at 23 Capricorn, and Pluto, which actually transforms, even obliterates, or at the very least removes all the excess, is going to have you go through each and every one of your rules and say, okay, we can keep this one and this one, but this one we don't need anymore. And so it is saying which of your rules are important, which of your rules are working for you, which of your rules are really supporting what it is that you're trying to do with your life, and which need to be discarded. And so because I don't want any confusion, I'm actually using rules and beliefs as a similar idea. Sometimes people think of rules as something that happens external, but we can make our own rules just as we can adopt our own beliefs. So the interesting thing about the sun moon making a semi-sextile to Pluto is, first of all, it's a looking forward semi-sextile to that Pluto. That means you can clearly see what is irritating you, what is the problem. It's not something that's hidden from you. And second, it is basically something that you were valuing that may not be something that is in line with who you are. So you might be a person who really values education. That's wonderful. But the idea of pulling in hundreds of thousands of dollars of student loan debt or having so many people burdened by student loan debt would be maybe irritating to you. Okay, so that would be the semi-sextile. So then the question is, how do we get all the education without the debt? How do we eliminate what's unnecessary? And then to answer this, what we have is Mercury trine Mars. So Mercury, which is in Sagittarius, doing thinking and actively considering and collecting information, is making a trine to Mars in Aries, which says, okay, now that I have the information, I'm going to just instantly do it. It is, now that I know how to do something, I'm not going to hesitate. I'm not going to put it on my schedule. I'm not going to think about doing it for a week. No, I'm going to do it immediately. So this is thought, action, and they are so linked, they're instantaneous. Now, most of the time, that's a really good thing because the Mercury is learning and growing. But this also says that the moment you have a thought run through your head, you may act on it. And so that can manifest as expressing anger or frustration at somebody very, very quickly without considering any mitigating circumstances. Now, Venus at 28 Scorpio is making this lovely sextile to Jupiter at 28 Capricorn. Now, that is this desire to indulge and, have a good time. This is not a scoop of ice cream. This is the ice cream store. But it is just a sextile, so you do have to take some sort of action to get this benefit. But it does say that, in this time of holiday gift giving, there's going to be a lot of gifts that are exchanged because people have been cooped up and they've had a lot of time to think about it. Maybe they really want to express affection and love. But there is a lot of material goods with that Venus going back and forth. And so we all are likely to gain more stuff. One of the most important aspects for this solar eclipse is one we've been dealing with for a while, and that is that Neptune is squaring the North Node and the South Node. So the North Node is, of course, our life path. It's that direction that if we go that way, we're going to be happy. But it is the harder road because it is a road we're not familiar with. The South Node is where we've come from, and so it is familiar, but it is also going backwards. And so if you want something new or different in your life, you can't go back to what you've had before. Now Neptune is actually squaring both of those, and so you're forced to make a choice, just like over and over again. Should I go forward or should I go backwards? And Neptune, while it can bring some clarity, often brings confusion. So I think of it like a fog. So when it's foggy, it's hard to see anything. But then the moments that the fog clears, just even a little bit, suddenly everything is crystal clear. And so as you're moving towards the fog, as you're moving towards a thing that you say, I cannot figure out, then it's going to clear. But the hard part is going towards a decision where you don't know how to collect the data, you don't know how to assess the risk, you don't know how to determine the probabilities of what's going to happen, and you have to go towards the decision anyway. And so that would be like if you were saying, I don't know whether to leave my job or not because I don't know if I'm going to find another job that I really like, and I don't know if I should stay here because the company is going through lots of changes. And what you have to do is go through the motions as though you're going to make your decision. And that could be updating your resume, going out on LinkedIn and connecting with some colleagues who now work at other companies, or actually doing a meditation about this. You have to not avoid thinking about it. You have to actually work the problem. So on top of all of this, now Saturn is at 29 Capricorn. And so Saturn goes around the wheel in about 28 to 29 years. which means it's in each sign for about 2.5 years. So every 2.5 years, it gets to 29 degrees of whatever sign it's in. But when Saturn is at 29, it's at a critical degree because it's saying that you only have days left of the energy of Saturn in this sign. So Saturn in Capricorn was very much about honoring tradition, really focusing on career and reputation, really being responsible, looking at your obligations. And now as it's leaving, Saturn is going to take something so that you can go on your journey. And so it's going to say, look, I feel like you're burdened by this. I'm going to take it. But it may not be something that you feel was a burden. You may feel it's something you wanted to keep. So the thing to do about this is to choose what you want to give to Saturn, to say, all right, I need to lighten my load. So therefore, I'm going to give this up. And that could be maybe a habit, or maybe you're decluttering, or maybe you are quitting your job and saying, you know what, I am going to leave this responsibility and go off and get new responsibilities. So you don't need to be nervous about Saturn at 29 degrees because you've been through Saturn at 29 degrees before, but you might find it useful to look back 2.5 years or 5 years or 7.5 years and look at the different times where Saturn was at 29 degrees and say, all right, what did I lose? So 3 years ago, Saturn was at 29 Sagittarius. Now you're going to say, Donna, you just said it's a 2.5-year cycle. But that's the average because Saturn has an elliptic orbit. And I don't want to talk to you about logarithms today because my little math brain would end up hurting. So it's just, if you look in an ephemeris, you can see that Saturn was at 29 degrees of Sagittarius 3 years ago at Christmas time. So look at 2017 around Christmas time and say, well, what did I let go of? What did I release during that time? Now, it may not have happened exactly at that time. It could have happened even months before that as Saturn was preparing to get to 29. But if you haven't released something by now, then Saturn is looking to take something. And the final big story about this eclipse is Uranus is at 7 degrees and virtually unaspected. So Uranus is already a wild card. Uranus is already kind of that student who's going to jump the fence at high school and just go do whatever they want. And now being unaspected means it's more of a wild card than ever. So this means that inside you can have these extremely odd impulses to go and do something. And you might think, why am I wanting to do this? But it could be because this Uranus is being triggered. And so it's important to stop and ask yourself, is this beneficial? Is it in line with my goals? Not to just run off, as I said, to jump the fence and, maybe ruin your GPA because you miss a test, but to look at why you're feeling this impulse. Now, it also can be really problematic for distractions where you are, heeding the beeps of the phone or, watching video after video versus collecting that little bit of information that you've been looking for and then going and applying that information to what you want to do. For example, like if you watch a productivity video and it gives you this tip and you say, oh my gosh, this thing is really going to work for me. But then you go on to the next productivity video and then the next productivity video and you're not actually doing your stuff. And so this Uranus says that distractions are quite heightened at this time. Okay, so let's go around the wheel pretty quick and just look at some of the highlights for each sign. So for Aries natives, if we look at your money situation, you still, of course, have Uranus going through that house, which says just over and over to you, have to change how you handle money, how you see money, and just continue to change it until Uranus leaves, which is still going to be a long, long time. Now, Mars is going to go into your house of money pretty soon, and so we'll be talking about that in a future video. That's an exciting time coming up. When we look at the relationship that you have between Venus and Pluto, right now you are doing a kind of a little bit of a wide sextile, but it does say you will be accumulating some money during this period. That period is the next 2 to 4 weeks. So you have the opportunity to make more money than usual. There's no aspect between Venus and Mars, so that one's not giving you any help. If we look back at Mars, your focus, which is the Mars in Aries in your own sign, says work on things that bring you confidence, work on your ability to take action, work on your physical self by working out. That's what Mars is focused on. When we look at your relationships, as I said, with the Mars-Venus aspect, there is no Mars-Venus aspect, so the timing's off a little bit. If you want to get together with your sweetheart or meet someone new, you're going to have to really work at it because the timing's not automatic. And when we look at your career, there's a great deal of emphasis on education. And so this is not just about, going back to school or doing something traditional, but also just working on your skills so that you are, even better at typing or better at doing Excel or whatever specifically is involved in your career. For Taurus natives, you guys are doing a very strong house of business income, income from partnerships, and also income from investments. So that looks really good. But you are having a little trouble accumulating money because we don't have an aspect between Mercury and Jupiter. And so while you could be making more money, you seem to be pouring the money back into whatever it is, or the money's being spent right away. So if you want to accumulate money, you're going to have to do it very consciously because it's not automatic this time. As you have been doing for the last few months, Mars in Aries in your 12th house is giving you enormous amounts of energy. Now, if you're not feeling that energy, you still need to get some sleep, and that Mars in Aries can interrupt sleep. So try to go to bed a little earlier so that you can get the sleep. I don't know if you can sleep later, if that's a possibility, but if you can get more quality sleep, you're going to find that your energy just goes through the roof. And you don't have too much longer to have this Mars in your 12th house, and so you want to capitalize on this while you have the chance. When we look at your love life, actually things are lining up. Venus is just barely in your 7th house, but it is making a sextile to that Pluto. And so there are opportunities for meeting somebody new and furthering your current relationship. When we look at your career, Saturn is just about to cross into your 10th house, and that does indicate some major change in your career. So if you want to know what that change is, you want to direct that energy. You want to tell the universe what you want. You want to tell your boss what you want. You want to be looking around for a better career because that change is going to happen one way or the other. For Gemini natives, you guys have had some really tough energy in your house of business income and investments, but Saturn is about to leave that house, actually just Xing out all those restrictions. Now, Jupiter is leaving also. Some of your protection is leaving as well, and that's going to then have just Pluto remaining in that house. Pluto, is that rags to riches and then riches to rags. So you will have bigger opportunities over the next year, but you do have to be careful because it can take you up, but it can also take you down. So now when we look at your ability to accumulate money, when we look at the Moon Saturn, we have a very wide semi-sextile, so a little bit on the irritating side. It does mean that accumulation of money is a little bit challenging. There's more desire than ability this time, and so you're going to have to do things like automatic deposit or just hide some money from yourself so you can accumulate. When we look at your Mars focus, it's on community and getting involved with groups of like-minded people. If you're involved in any professional groups or things like that, you might want to run for the board or just get involved like volunteering or things like that. Get together with friends. You know, right now all of our get-togethers are by Zoom, but that still counts. And so you want to connect with people. When we look at your relationships, you have a fabulous house of relationships going on. So that's bringing lots of positive energy, but the timing is a little off because we don't have a good connection between Mercury and Jupiter. And so you are able to meet someone, but maybe they're very busy because of the holidays and you can't quite get together, or because of COVID or something like that. So you have to be a little bit patient, but there are some really good relationship opportunities this time. And finally, when we're looking at your career, things are just kind of moving along, morphing into whatever they're going to morph into. You don't have a lot of activity going on in this area right now. So if you are in a job, it's just going to kind of continue. If you're looking for a job, you're going to want to do some things that are more maybe magical, like affirmations or meditations, lighting candles or things like that, because you're going to need to kind of give this energy a little kick. For Cancer natives, you guys are doing a lot more work than actually making money. And so maybe you are, working on something that's going to then, launch like a new product. Maybe you're working on a video course or something like that. But you're doing more of the work rather than receiving the benefits. And we see that not just because of the full sixth house, but also because there's no aspect between the Sun and Uranus going on. And so there is that difficulty. Now, the co-ruler Saturn, again, it's pretty wide, so 6 degrees. So you have this tiny little opportunity to accumulate money, but it's definitely weak, and what it's going to need is some help from others, and that will help you accumulate. So you might want to go to friends or knowledgeable people and say, how can I make more money? Your focus, though, is on career because Mars is up in the 10th house, and it says for you to take direct action, really talk to your supervisors or even your boss's boss, be first in line if you're supposed to speak in a group, volunteer for things, just really be very proactive. And that kind of covers it on your career, except for if you are looking for a new job, you have really good energy for doing that. So you want to really, put out the resume now, because as soon as that Mars goes into Taurus, then you've lost that momentum. So you really want to focus on getting that new job, really making a push. Despite the fact that it's the holidays, it can come through. So for Leo natives, you guys are actually doing one of the best charts for accumulating money. And this is because you're taking a very hands-off approach. You have that Neptune up there, and that says, just basically leave it to the universe. Mercury is making an amazing square to that Neptune, and so you really want to just set it up so things go automatically into your savings account, automatically into your brokerage account. And if you can do that, then the ability to accumulate money is very strong this period. Now, it does say here, because you've got so many planets in your house of risk-taking, that you may be considering taking a big risk. And I always want to caution you to do your due diligence. All right, you might be tempted to do it. And with that square, you might be thinking to go with your gut feelings on this. But as always, it's very important to read the fine print, really understand the investment you're getting into before you actually put money in. And speaking of that, Mars is in your house of education this time, so more you can learn, the better. And that could be taking video courses or reading blogs or reading books, or actually, like if you were doing some investing, maybe paper trading, really working on your decision-making skills, all of that. That's what the focus is for this time. When it comes to relationships, you have a wonderful house of romance going on, so that's fantastic. Very easy to meet somebody, but the timing is off because Sun is not making an aspect with Uranus, and so you really do want to just be very spontaneous. If it happens, it happens, and if it doesn't, just let it be. It's not going to be a sign that something's not going to work just because the date didn't happen. And when we look at your career, of course, you have Uranus up there. You've had Uranus there for ages, and it's going to be there for a long while. So this does mean that the industry that you're in is most likely changing. The company is going through changes, and you're going through changes. And so you have to be a person who's ready to adjust. Now, Mars is in your 9th house, and so education can help. And that is, looking at the parts of your job that you really like to do and getting more education around that so that you can expand your career in that direction. So for Virgo natives, when we look at your money, you have the Mars in your 8th house for business income and also for investment income. So you do have this active, I'm going to go get the money and find the money, but you are having some difficulty accumulating money this time because there's no aspect between Venus and Mars, and so you need to be very conscious of actually taking the profits and putting that somewhere instead of just pouring the profits back into whatever you're doing. Or, maybe it is that you are spending money on equipment and you need the equipment, and then that's reasonable, but it's just saying that accumulation of money is a little challenging this time. And speaking of the Mars focus, that Mars is focused on resources and how you can figure out, your investments, how you can maybe, have a relationship with your banker, or what you can do to create passive income sources or your own business. If you've been thinking about doing affiliate marketing or something like that, this Mars is in the perfect position to do it, and not for much longer. Mars has been there for months now, and now you have mere days left. So if you were going to do it, now is the time. So Virgo natives, even though you have kind of a challenging love and romance house, you do have a great lineup between Mercury and Neptune, which does say that your love life can go pretty well. That means you can meet someone, and maybe at the first date, you're not sure. Maybe you're feeling like, I don't know if this is a match. Maybe you're even thinking, I don't know if I want the first date. But once things start to happen, the energies do line up. So plus the Mars in the 8th house can bring some intimacy. When we look at your career, the North Node is sitting right there, and that does say that you are supposed to be following your path. So if you're working in something that is not to your liking, then it's very important that you figure out what it is that you do want to do. As you do, then the universe will open up doors for you. So you have to stop and think about this. Remember what we said at the beginning about that square to Neptune, making it a little difficult to really pinpoint things until you try them, until you go towards the thing that you can't see that's all foggy. As you do that, then things clear up. So for Libra natives, you guys are doing Venus right at that tail end of your 2nd house, and that does mean that a little spending could be going on, but not a huge amount. This is going to be leaving that house very, very soon. You do show the ability to accumulate money this time because there is an aspect between the Venus and the Pluto, and it is a sextile. It's a little on the wide side, and it's a sextile, so that does mean it means you have to be quite conscious about it. That is that you put money first. And I know that sounds terrible because you should put your family and your relationships first, then put money second, but put it very high up on your priorities. And that's what's going to cause you to accumulate money. Mars is in your 7th house, so the focus is outward. It is on connecting to other people. If you've been a little isolated, if you have, just been in your home and not maybe reaching out to friends or new people, this is the time to do it. You want to actually make a concerted effort to reach out and connect, not just to people that you don't know, but also those ones that you've known for a while but you haven't talked to in a long while. Now, when it comes to relationships, of course, that Mars is helping. It can cause you to meet new people. I shouldn't say cause, it'll help you meet new people, but the timing is off because there's no aspect between the Venus and the Mars. And so that does mean that you're going to have to work a little harder to make the connection. In other words, you have to leave a message and maybe they call you back. Maybe you leave them a second message. Maybe you have to text a few times before you get a response. And so try not to feel despondent about that, but understand it's just the energies are not quite lining up. When it comes to your career, things are just moving along, pretty regularly, pretty normally. The house is empty. The North Node's behind it, which says that you have an idea of the direction you want to go, but it hasn't fully manifested yet. So you have an inkling of where you're heading and you're just taking the steps in that direction. So if you are in a job, you're probably staying in that job. If you're looking for something now, you're going to have to do more effort to find it because there aren't any planets there to help you. And with that full third house, what you want to do is lots and lots of communication, sending out your resume all over the place, contacting people on LinkedIn, things like that. You really want to step that up. For Scorpio natives, you guys have an amazing second house. This means that this could be one of your best periods for making money. And that is not necessarily yet accumulating money because when we look at the Mercury, Jupiter, we don't have an aspect, but you are amassing money. Money is coming in. Now, that money could be going out. Perhaps you are paying down some bills or, you just have places for that money to go, so it's not being saved. But that's okay because you can buy investments and things like that, and that will feel like the money's going out, but it's kind of secretly accumulating. But this is not a natural accumulation of money, so while you're making more money, you want to find ways to hide it from yourself. Mars is focused on your 6th house, and so this is your area of routines and processes that you do things, and so it's looking at how you can streamline and make things faster, rather than looking at things that you do every day, like meal prep or laundry or things like that, and saying, oh, I don't want to do these things. Instead, say, how can I do this in half the time? Or how can I delegate this? Or how can I streamline this so it's fun to do? Or that I actually get exercise when I do it, or something like that. So you want to figure out how you can make the systems in your life better. So when we're looking at relationships, of course, you have Uranus in the 7th house. You've had that there for a long time, and you're going to have it there for a long time. So we're not so concerned about that. What we are looking at is the relationship between Venus and Pluto, and we have that little sextile going on. So that does mean there's an opportunity for love. That means that you guys can get together. It takes a little bit of effort. So it's like one phone call, and then something comes together. It's one text, and things come together. It does also say that you can meet somebody new, and there can be some real sparkage going on, because when we have a connection between Venus and Pluto, we can have, some intense stuff going on. When it comes to your career, there could be some financial gain this time, specifically from your career, like a bonus or something like that, because the ruler of the 10th house is in the 2nd house. But for the most part, your career is just going along, just, like not changing. Now, that can change pretty soon. And that was a lot of change in one sentence, because Saturn is going to change signs and cross your midheaven IC line. And when that does, it can rock your world. So you do want to look to see if your company is stable, if there's not a merger going on, if your department isn't going through a change, because there could be some big change for that. But this says that you're not initiating that change so much as outside is initiating that change, like your boss or somebody like that. So you just want to be aware and be prepared in case there is a change. So when we look at Sagittarius's money, what you have is you have those 3 planets. You've had them there for ages now, but Saturn and Jupiter are getting ready to leave that house. Now, when Saturn leaves, that means the restrictions on your money are lifted. When the Jupiter leaves, it means the luck is lifted. And so that means that you just have Pluto. Now, we have talked about Pluto before. It's this rags to riches to rags sort of planet, and what it does is it causes you to focus your energy to make the big score, but it also means you're taking a lot of risks. So the more money you can accumulate so that you can weather the storms and get to the point of success, the better. So good news for you this time, because you do have an aspect between Saturn and the moon, and that does say you can accumulate money, but it's a semi-sextile, which is irritating. And so you're going to have to do something that maybe that you're cutting back on something, or you're putting more money in savings, or you're paying down debt, or you're doing something to accumulate money that you don't really want to do, but you have to do it this time. So interesting that Mars is going through right now your house of risk-taking and creativity. And the more you are creative and the more you look at how you deal with risk and how you assess risk, the better. That means work on your decision-making skills, work on how you can figure out if something's going to work for you and what the downside is. And that's going to help a lot as you deal with Pluto in your second house. Now, Mars only has a few days left to be in your fifth house, then it's going to go into your sixth house, so you want to work on this right now. When we look at your love life, you have a fabulous first house and Venus rising in your chart, so you're looking really good. And that means you can attract somebody, and that's wonderful. It also means that your current relationship could be going well also, but there is no relationship between Mercury and Jupiter right now, and that means that the timing is off. And so you are looking good and somebody wants to go out with you, but you're busy that night, so you will have to work out those little logistical things. And then once you do work it out, it's okay, but you have to get over that little bit of a hump. So for Capricorn natives, you guys are going to have this very interesting thing of Saturn and Jupiter entering your second house, and that is happening very soon. Now, Saturn restricts things, but we call it the slow growth wealth aspect, because while Saturn transits your second house over that 2.5 years, what's going to happen is you are going to get very focused on making money, figuring out how to budget, figuring out how to amass more funds, how to get bankers to give you loans, all of those sort of things. Now, when Jupiter is going through that house, which will be there for about a year, it's going to expand possibilities and bring you luck. And so the combination here is really excellent. But in the initial, when it goes in there, your first reaction to it is going to be, I feel poor. And that's what causes you to work harder at this. So expect there to be this kind of realization of your financial picture, and that it is making you vulnerable and that you need to do something about it. That said, when we look at your ability to accumulate money this month, what we're seeing is that there's no relationship between Uranus and the Sun, and that means you have to really work at accumulating money. That means more money is going out than coming in. And that's what gets you so focused, and that's what gets you on the right track towards prosperity. Your Mars focus is at home, and that could be that you're working at home. Maybe you are decluttering so that you're clearing things out, so you're creating energy flow and doing some better feng shui. It could be that you are getting together with your family to find a business that you can do together, or you might be doing something involving real estate where you're renting out a room or getting your real estate license. That's the focus, is how to create a good home that is kind of your launch pad for going out and doing everything else. So when it comes to relationships, you've got a full 12th house, which means that you feel invisible, but you are actually not invisible to other people. And so other people are noticing you, but you're not noticing that they're noticing you. And so right now, what it feels like is that you're all alone, and that nobody's out there and nobody likes you. And this is not true. This is, you may have to hear it from a friend that, oh, this person's checking you out, and so that you should go forward. Or your friend says, oh, this person winked at you on Match, and so you need to talk to them, that sort of thing. But this is, you have the ability to connect, but you kind of have to, you're like feeling in the dark, for like how to do this. And the same thing if you're in an existing relationship, that is, you may not entirely understand what's going on with your partner right now, and you're going to have to stop and listen. Now, there is a relationship going on between Saturn and the moon, and that does mean that once you do this, the timing does work out, and so you get the first date, or things get better with your sweetheart and all of that. So when we look at your career, it's kind of steady as she goes. There's nothing in the house, nothing in the ninth house, and Venus is just about to go in the 12th house, which would be more about working on projects that are, behind the scenes. Maybe you're given a big project, and so you and your team are working on it, but there's nothing where you're reporting back, and there's no big launch or anything like that. So it's just kind of steady as she goes. So for Aquarius natives, you guys are doing a very strong money chart this time, because the aspect between Neptune and Mercury is a square, and so that does say you have the ability to accumulate money. Not to mention that incredible 11th house, money derived from career, is super beautiful. That means you could be getting money from a bonus or commission or extra hours at work, but there's something that is bringing you more money, and you have the ability to make more money than usual and put some in your savings account or pay down debt. Your Mars focus is on communication and decision making. I know I'm really harping on decision making in this video, but I think it's so important that if you know how to make a decision, that you can just up your game. And that's what this Mars is about in that third house, is how to collect the information that you need and then sit down with it and process that information. Not just to put a pros and cons list, but actually, what is the probability that this thing that I want to have happen is going to happen? And what's the probability that it's not going to happen? And doing that sort of assessment. So there's an awful lot here about communication, but also processing information. Now, when it comes to relationships, it's a little bit of a struggle because there's no aspect going on between the Sun and Uranus, and you've got a lot of energy focused very much on community and friendship and doing things behind the scenes that it's, we have just like a no man's land in your 7th and 8th houses. Even your 5th house with the North Node still doesn't have a planet in it. So we have a little bit of a period where your focus is just elsewhere. And when we look at your career, you have Venus just exiting that house, which says that you might receive some recognition or maybe a compliment from a customer or something like that, and it goes in your records, always so nice. You also show that really great 11th house, money derived from career. So your career is going pretty well. I think in the background, you're kind of thinking, maybe you want to make some changes because it is co-ruled by that Mars in the 3rd house, but you haven't necessarily made the decision, right? And so you are still weighing your options. Pisces, when it comes to your money, you have Mars in that house, and that says that you are taking direct action to make money. That is fantastic. But Mars has been there for several months, and it only has a few days left, and then it's going to leave. And so you need to plant as many seeds as possible. You can still make money after Mars is out of that house, but you're going to be feeling like you should take action elsewhere. And so it's extremely important that you get seeds planted. Now, seeds in this case would be, starting a business, doing affiliate marketing, like setting up your links or things like that, starting your YouTube channel, but also sending out your resume, etc. Now, when we look at accumulation of money, there's not an aspect going on between Mars and Venus, and so that means that you are making money, but you're putting money right out again. And so the energy is that maybe you're buying equipment or you are just catching up from previous months, but it's difficult for you to accumulate because of that Mars there. Also, because it's so quick to buy something, and so you want to focus on just buying things that are returnable this time. As we were just talking about, Mars focuses you on that 2nd house, and so 2nd house is also self-worth, and it's also your possessions. So it says to look at your possessions first of all and say, what is it that I can sell? What do I need? What do I not need anymore? How can I declutter and make a profit? This is also about self-worth, and self-worth is that part of you that says, I'm deserving of something. So if you don't feel deserving, what do you need to do, Mars, to get yourself into a place where you do feel deserving? Because that Mars is the key. Now, when it comes to relationships, you have a very good placement here because Mercury is making that square to Neptune, and that does say that the timing is working, that you can make a connection with somebody that's really special. Plus, you have that Venus very elevated in your chart, so you're looking good. So if you want to meet someone new, you have a really good opportunity to do so. Now, if you're already in a love relationship, again, you can really hear each other, you can connect with each other, so this energy is quite good. And then when we look at your career, you have this marvelous house of career going on with the Mercury, Sun, Moon, and that Venus just going in there. And that means that your reputation in your career is good. Your boss likes you. You can ask for a raise. You can ask for a promotion. You can really sit down with them and say, what is the track to this upper position? It also says that if you're searching for what it is that you want to do, you're really going to get some inspiration this time. So you really want to carve out that time to do that type of meditation. And that's it. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please subscribe and stay tuned because LaRue wants to say hi.